Into some college football stuff, and there has been some news and some chatter around college football. I could talk all about, and maybe even take a victory lap about Deion Sanders in Colorado becoming the #1 transfer portal team in the country, but I won't. I'm not going to do that. What I do want to talk about is something that I was talking about 3 years ago, and that is rule change proposals. So let's get into it. The commissioners and the powers that be in college football have proposed, although they haven't even debated these things, just proposed. They've kind of floated out the proposal of 4 rule changes that all have to do with, let's say, timing. When you read articles about this, you'll read that like, hey, there's 4 proposals out there. 2 of them have a lot of consensus, and then the other 2, there's some pushback. The 2 that have consensus that are going to pass that will be changed are no-brainers, and it's like, why are we wasting time doing this? Just do it. It doesn't have to be debated. You don't have to waste time on this. No back-to-back timeouts. Yeah, obviously. Enact that rule. Adopt the rule immediately. And then if a penalty ends the first or third quarter, they're not going to have an untimed down in the first or third quarter. They'll just do it as the first play of the second quarter, the fourth quarter. Again, no brainer. And it's not going to affect anybody whatsoever. And by the way, that's not going to speed anything up. Now, the next 2 are going to speed things up. And I want to talk about these because these next 2 are important, and I do think that they need to be adopted. The third one is there's a proposal that the clock would no longer stop after every first down in the game, and it would only stop in the last 2 minutes of each half. I've been arguing for this for years. Like I said, I was talking about this 3 years ago. 3 years ago. I've been saying this for a long time. And I'll tell you why after I mentioned the 4th one. Then the 4th one would be a proposal of that the clock would not stop after incomplete passes. This one's a little bit more controversial, but let's get into it. What you're going to hear a lot about, and I don't want you to get sucked into this, is that it's all about game time. All right, they're going to say like, well, our games have crept up to 3 hours and 20 minutes, and a few years ago they were 3 hours and 17 minutes. I don't care about game time. And I don't think any of you care about 2 or 3 minutes here or there. Personally, I'm not going to feel it in the booth if the game is 3 hours and 20 minutes versus 3 hours and 17 minutes. And I don't think that we should be wasting our energy on those 3 minutes, okay, of real time. What we should be paying attention to is snap volume. And again, I've been saying this for 3 years. The reason that you enact some of these rules, adopt some of these rules, is to reduce the total number of snaps per game. It's a player safety issue. It's not about game time. I don't care about the 3 minutes of real time. 3:17, 3:20. Pound sand. Who cares? What I do care about is the potential of reducing a game by 10 to 20 to 30 total snaps. Now you're talking about something. You see, the hypocrisy of the rule makers in college football is, it is so rich and so palpable. They talk about player safety and they're like targeting this and targeting that and rules, and yet they've never touched the clock. And quite frankly, the targeting rule, we put it under this player safety guise. Is there any way that we can measure whether targeting has made the game safer or not? No. You can't measure that at all. At all. So they enact this rule and then they're claiming like, oh, the game is safer. We've lowered the strike zone. Yeah, but you've also encouraged quarterbacks to throw the ball in precarious spots because they can gain an advantage. So I have no idea whatsoever, and nobody does, and no one can argue that they have. I don't know if targeting has made the game safer. But I do know that if you change the clock rules and reduce the total number of snaps, what you've done is limit the exposure. And to me, snaps is player safety. It's tangible. You limit the number of snaps, you're going to limit the number of injuries. And when you talk about where we're going, and in terms of expanding the playoffs, potential of more postseason games, this has to go down. You have to adopt these rules. So not only are they late, but they're talking about it in the wrong vein. It's not about game time. It's about player safety. So let's talk about it in terms of player safety. If we can reduce the total number of snaps by between 10 and 30 per game, then you're actually tangibly talking about making the game safer for players. You're limiting their exposure. But you're also doing another thing. And this is going to be my second point. It's going to do two things. One of them, limit snaps, player safety. Yes, obviously. But it's going to do another thing, and I don't think that many people realize this yet. But when you reduce the number of total snaps, what you're also doing is increasing competitiveness. You're increasing parity. How's that? Well, let's say I was playing golf against Tiger Woods, John Rahm, whoever. And you tell me, like, you got one hole. Could you beat him on one hole? Probably not. But my chances of beating him on one hole, a lot better than beating him on 5 or 10 or 18 or 72 or over the course of the whole season. You see, the better you are, what you want is more volume, more time, because the cream is always going to rise to the top. And in a sport where we have a huge margin between our best teams and our average teams, what you see is the best teams in college football, the offensive coaches in college football, they want snap volume because it's a way for them to maintain the advantage. Maintain the advantage. If we can reduce the total number of snaps, what you start to get is more parity. Now, a team can catch lightning in a bottle. I think you'll have more upsets. You're going to reduce the total number of possessions. This is a tangible way to make the game more competitive, and I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. Shame on them for not putting these rule changes in this vein. They're arguing about 3 minutes of real time as if anybody cares. Anybody cares. When all they should be talking about is minimizing the exposure for the athlete in terms of their player safety and creating a more competitive landscape. And it does both of those things tangibly. That's why I'm in favor of both. And I understand that stopping the clock, not stopping the clock after incompletions is pretty drastic. I would only do it in the first quarter and in the third quarter, and in the second quarter and the fourth quarter, it would stop like we normally see it. And again, the clock would stop after a first down in the last 2 minutes of each half. So you retain what's great about college football, which is not requiring a quarterback and an offense to operate as clean and efficient as an NFL offense would operate in the 2-minute drill. And yet you get the benefit of limiting the total number of snaps. Because right now, college football has I think it's over 180 snaps per game on average. NFL is just over 150. That doesn't make any sense. So these rules should absolutely be adopted. And if anybody is worth their salt, they will talk about it in terms of player safety, and they will talk about it in terms of competitiveness. Here's some of the problems out there. Number one is they're talking about timing. And if you're going to talk about timing, you better talk about officiating. And yet no one wants to put officiating on the table. Why are we not talking about the review process in college football? If you're worried about the 3 minutes of real time, from 3 hours and 20 minutes to 3 hours and 17 minutes, maybe, and this is, just me thinking out loud, maybe we shouldn't allow a replay official to stop the game whenever he wants all game long. Why don't we have these coaches that are making $6+, $7+, $8+, $9+ million a year, make them responsible for stopping the clock with coaches' challenges? It's too obvious. I mean, sometimes it hurts my head how obvious some of these things are. It's like, guys, you're 3 years late on the clock issues, which now you're just getting to. And the issues that you should be talking about, we aren't talking about. If you want to talk about timing, put officiating on the table. We should have a national officiating base. We should revamp review and not have it stopped all the time by the guy up in the booth. It doesn't make any sense. And with all of our attention focused on these clock rules, guess what we're not focusing on? All the things that need to be addressed currently. So this is what happens when things bleed over, right? It's taken 3 years to get to these issues that should have been addressed back then. And now all of a sudden you're addressing them now. Guess what it takes away the focus of? NIL boundaries, transfer portal, the calendar in general, which I've talked about at length already. All of these things need to be addressed right now. And are not because we are so late. College football and intercollegiate athletics in general moves like the Titanic, man. I mean, you can see an iceberg dead ahead from miles, and it's just like, oh, all heads starboard, whatever they do. I don't need to turn the wheel, and it's just like, it takes forever to turn. Meanwhile, the NFL is like a speedboat. Do you know why? College football moves so slowly because those in charge of college football are also looking after non-revenue sports. And it's maddening. It's maddening. This is yet another reason why we need an entity looking after just college football. Rules, governance, all of these things. But when we have the same people, these same commissioners that are also in charge of non-revenue sports, and they've got to show up in the swimming and diving championships, for each conference, and it takes their attention away from these things that need to get fixed in a fairly quick manner in the sport that matters because it generates the revenue. It doesn't matter more because the people matter more. It matters more because it pays for everything. You wouldn't have any of the other sports unless football was there paying for all these sports. So we need people focused on making football better all year long. This is all they should be doing. So the lack of focus on an annual basis, on a year-long basis, year-round basis, I guess I should say, really hurts college football. And you can see it in this regard when it takes years and years to get to rules and to get to movement of things that should have happened a long time ago. And it happened with NIL, and now it's happening with these rules, and it's happening now with the calendar. We need people to move quicker. Okay, so this needs to pick up. How do we do that? We've got to create some sort of base, some sort of governing body that just looks after college football, period.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.